O'Shea Sibley should be dancing. But instead, O'Shea Sibley is dead, killed at 28 years old for being a gay black man. On July 29th, O'Shea and a group of friends were coming back from a day at the beach. They stopped to get gas, blasting Beyoncé and dancing. They were approached by a group of men who demanded that they stop. After a series of verbal exchanges, O'Shea was stabbed in the heart and later died. The person accused and seen on video is a 17-year-old high school student. We don't know at this time what may have motivated the person who stabbed O'Shea. O'Shea's friend, Otis Pena, who put pressure on his wound to try to stop him from bleeding out, said the group of guys hurled anti-gay slurs at them and said they were screaming, "We Muslim and we don't like gays."
Yeah. They killed O'Shea. They killed him right in front of me. I was covered in his blood. They murdered him because he was gay. Because he stood up for his friends.
Otis said O'Shea was trying to calmly talk with the guys, that it's okay to be gay. We're just listening to our music. There's no hate. It's all love. While several witnesses have verified Otis's account, the lawyer for the 17-year-old arrested said he's actually Christian, and there's more video and witness testimony to be seen and heard. So while there are things we don't know about this incident, there are important things that we do know, and there are urgent questions that we need to ask. O'Shea was an accomplished professional dancer.
Branches were sown by the color of green. The ground had rose and past its knees.
On the night he was killed, O'Shea and his friends were voguing, a style of dance that comes out of the black queer culture from the 1970s. O'Shea was out, loud, proud, and full of grace, refusing to be shamed by the dominant anti-LGBTQ patriarchal society. In June 2020, at the height of the uprisings against the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, O'Shea took part in a video to celebrate Pride 2020 and pay homage to the Black Lives Matter movement. The caption to the video says that this video showcases how black and brown, queer and trans people can use voguing as a form of protest and as a source of joy in this political climate. We have to ask, what kind of society and culture fills a 17-year-old with such hatred of those whose sheer existence challenges the patriarchal gender norms that they lash out with this kind of deadly violence? It's a society that rears men and boys on an aggressive and violent masculinity. A culture where all the major religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, are saturated in and serve to reinforce patriarchy and male supremacy going back thousands of years. From a very early age, boys are brought up to think that their worth and their power is their manhood, which they have to prove and which they have a duty to enforce. You have to be strong, not weak. You have to be dominant, not the dominated. You have to be a wolf, not a sheep, alpha, not beta. You have to fight for your position in the pecking order, and if you don't want to be a bitch, you have to make someone your bitch, all with an electric undercurrent of violence and the threat of violence. While this is largely directed at the domination and degradation of women, there is a special hatred and violence reserved for men who defy these roles. Men who are or appear to be weak or effeminate, a pussy, a bitch, a faggot. And trans women, gay men, even worse. You are told that to be a strong motherfucker, you have to crush what you see as weak motherfuckers. And you see this in religion, in the family, in the culture, in the widespread violence and degradation of porn and music. Baby boys told not to cry like a girl. The dick-grabbing assertion of being a man, which requires the domination of women and the rejection of anything seen as feminine. Why else is it that when a man says something nice to another man, they feel they have to preface it with the disclaimer of no homo?
Were you aware of the fact that he said that when he came back to Brooklyn, he had to bring the good looks because you guys were lacking that?
I seen it, but I was like, man, he's just talking for the last. We already had good-looking dudes, no homo. But you know how it go.
All right.
All this calls to mind the sharp insight and the criticism of this guy culture from the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian.
Because a big part of all this is what we could call guy culture. It's a culture of degrading domination of women and of wanton violence, a kind of pornography of violence with an American chauvinist and male chauvinist thrust to it. Think about some of these video games where the point is you go out and you kill America's enemies. That's the point of the video game as identified by the army and the ruling class as a whole. Or the video games where a lot of youth are trained and conditioned to think while they're playing the game. They think they're just going like using their thumbs and fingers. They're using their brains, though. Their brains are being influenced. You have video games not only go out and kill America's enemies, you have video games where the high point is you get to hunt down and kill a woman who's portrayed as a whore. How does this condition young people, boys in particular, to think about women and the relations between genders?
We don't have to accept this. We don't have to live this way. This is not human nature, and it's not the nature of men. This kind of patriarchal dominance and degradation comes out of the earliest divisions of oppressor and oppressed and has now been fully integrated into this system of capitalism imperialism. This cannot be reformed. This system needs to be overthrown through an actual all-out revolution, overcoming all traditions' chains, all of what's embodied in these traditional gender roles and divisions, and all the oppressive relations bound up with this. But this won't happen without oppressed people, men, women, and differently gendered people coming together as equals and comrades to end all oppression. This is where our strength lies. This is where our beauty lies, in celebrating our differences, not in domination, but in emancipation. Breaking with, uprooting, and abolishing these outmoded ideas of what it means to be a man or a woman, redefining what it means to be human. In a video just hours after O'Shea was murdered, Otis said through tears, "We may be gay, but we exist. We're not going to live in fear. We're not going to live in hiding. Me and O'Shea were always out and loud, and y'all killed him. And to this we say, no more."